Imagine that you are responsible for putting together the next gold medal winning Olympic team. What would you need to think about? You already know what the goal is. The goal is to win gold. So you might first think, who do I want to have on that team? Then you might be wondering, how will I keep them, or how will I convince them to do the hard work and make the sacrifices necessary to win gold? And finally, you might be wondering, how will I communicate with them with all the different styles? How will I be an effective communicator? Well, chances are you are not, no one in this room has that responsibility of putting together the next gold medal winning Olympic team. But chances are you are involved in building teams within your organization. And the questions are the same. What is the goal? Who should be on that team? How do you get the people to buy in or get engaged in the initiatives that are going on? And how do you communicate with each other? How do you set those expectations? How do you give that performance feedback? Well, my client Dan was asking himself these same questions. As the head of his organization, he was facing many challenges common in many organizations, in many workplaces. There was sort of a lack of alignment between all the way from the board all the way down to the frontline employees. People weren't exactly sure what direction they were going in. There was a general lack of enthusiasm. People were doing their job, but just kind of going through the motions. And the managers were stressed out when it came to giving performance feedback. Can any of you relate to that? It can be hard. It can be really hard. It wasn't that Dan had a bad team. They were getting their work done. But Dan knew that they could be better. And Dan is a good leader. He cares deeply about his team, and he wanted them to be more than just average. He really wanted to help them become extraordinary, to really tap into their full potential and be as good as they could be. Today, there's full alignment all the way from the board, all the way to the frontline employees. Employees are taking initiative of those strategic goals. They're taking ownership. They're saying, hey, I can do that. And they're taking the steps necessary to make those goals come true. And the managers are no longer stressed out when it comes to getting or giving performance feedback. So, you may be wondering, how can I take my team from average to extraordinary? And if you ask Dan would tell you this. He would say it's all about getting back to basics. It's all about the ABCs of building extraordinary teams. And that's alignment, buy-in, and communication. Now, just because something is basic, don't be fooled into thinking that everyone is doing it. Because I've noticed in my work with people in different levels in the organization that people are not always doing the basic things that we need to do. So I took the liberty here of throwing up some tweetables for you. So if we have any tweeters in the room, anyone in here on Twitter, if you want, I've just made it very easy for you. If you want to tweet that, I know the conference would probably appreciate people tweeting about what's going on at the conference. And so you'll see these slides up here. But great teams begin with the basics. Okay? And that's what we're going to do. So over the next 60 minutes or so, we're going to cover the basics of building high-performance teams. So these ABCs. We'll first talk about what those are, and then we're going to circle back around, and I'm going to tell you exactly how you can put these ideas into action in your workplace. Because that's what it's really all about, isn't it? Once you leave the conference, what are you going to do with all of this information that you have learned here today? So, or not just today, over the course of the week, you have a lot of information that you're digesting. So we'll circle back around and I'll give you some very specific how-tos on how you can put this into play in your own organization. But I want to talk about alignment first of all. Alignment. So this is the right people in the right seats working toward the same goal. You need to have all three components in order to get that alignment that every organization desires so much. And it's so easy to get off track and to take some detours. So who are the right people? That's the first question we have to ask. Who are the right people? The right people are the people whose skill sets match the job requirements. Okay? That makes sense, doesn't it? How many of you in this room have ever made a bad hiring decision? Yes, me too. You got the wrong person in the wrong seat. Okay? What happened? I mean, what was that like? when you made that bad hiring decision? It's hard. It's hard, isn't it hard? It's hard on you. It's hard on them. It's hard on the rest of the team. Okay? And I know that because I've made bad hiring decisions. Prior to transitioning into the work I do now as a speaker and seminar leader, I was a director of operations at a financial services company. And at one point, we had many job openings, but I remember one in particular. I had an opening for a data processing position. Okay, so I need your help here. A data processing position. What skills might you think would be required or desirable for a data processing position? Just toss some out.
Data entry.
Yeah, data entry, what'd you say? Attention to detail. Accuracy, right? Really kind of deep thinking is really good. You want people really focused on the work. Okay, so that sounds good. Well, the receptionist in our office was interested in moving over into my position, or into my area, I'm sorry. So she was interested in the position, she was interested in moving over to my area. And I thought, wow, great. Heather is personable, she's outgoing, she's super friendly. What a great fit. Does anyone hear a disconnect? You're shaking your head. What was the disconnect?
Personal and outgoing?
Yeah. It wasn't needed. It wasn't required in order to do the job. So needless to say, it didn't work out very well. And poor Heather, she got put into this job, and about 50% of her time was spent in isolation. Working on, this outgoing, happy-go-lucky gal who loves that social interaction. She's stuck away in this, in an isolated area, keying in customer transactions. Fortunately for her and for us, because those are difficult situations, what do you do? We were actually in a period of growth within the company, and we were able to actually create a new job for her. You can't do that very often, right? But we were able to do that and get her into a more customer service-facing role, which was much, much easier for her. So in order to get that alignment and to get the right person, it's really important that we match somebody's natural priorities and preferences with the job requirements. So in other words, their strengths, okay, their strengths. Is it always easy to do that? It's hard because if somebody's internal, you might make a mistake like I did. I got blinded because I liked Heather on a personal level. That's what we do sometimes. We know people on the inside, they want the job and we like them and we think, we sort of overlook what that skill requirement is. If you're interviewing somebody from outside, externally, you don't always know for sure whether or not exactly what their skill sets are. They might have experience that can help, but otherwise it can be really hard to do that. So I have a free gift for you guys today, and I'm going to give it to you already. I have a couple of free gifts today, but I'm already going to give you one. So early in the program, I'm going to give you one. Are you, or raise your hand if you are familiar with the DISC assessment? Okay, lots of you are. Okay, well, I had the opportunity to get my hands on some free access codes for the Everything DISC profile, Everything Workplace profile. It's a good one. Anyone done that? Have you done that one? That's a really good one. So I have like $5,000 worth of access codes in my hands right now. I'm going to pass these out, okay? So please take one. Please use them. If you haven't used it, you'll really enjoy it. If you have used it, take it again and get your results. Take it by, I believe it says, September 9th or September 13th. They're only good for so long. And I know you have a lot going on here for the rest of the week. So put that somewhere safe. Take a picture of it. Make sure somehow you remember to take it because that's a great tool. That's not the only tool for determining job fit or that skill set, those strengths, but it's one tool, and it can help you make the best decisions possible. So while we're passing those around, then let's talk about the next part, which is going in the same direction. So take a peek up at that picture on the screen up there. We see the rowers, and it looks like the right people in the right seat. They look pretty professional, don't they? They look like they know what they're doing. What would happen if they did not share a common goal? What would happen if they were not all on the same page as far as the finish line went? What might you notice? You probably see people working really hard, because they're professionals and they would come to work and they would work really hard, that's their job, but they wouldn't get very far, would they? Does that ever happen where you work? People are working really hard, they're probably telling you how hard they're working, but not quite accomplishing those goals. Right? The basic work gets done, but people are working harder than they need to work. So that's the other component of alignment then. And again, we're going to circle back and I'm going to tell you specifically how we can make sure and what you can do to make sure that people are in alignment and going in the right direction. The best teams travel to their destination together. Another tweetable if you so choose, if you want to do that. The best teams travel to their destination together. Meaning you're taking all those individual strengths, you're taking all those individual skill sets, and everyone's coming together and we're all working together to reach our destination. The next component that we're going to talk about, what it is this buy-in. Buy-in, everyone's favorite word in the workplace. How do we get buy-in? How do we get people to take ownership? And that's what buy-in is about. Individuals taking ownership of initiatives and holding themselves accountable to do their part. Okay? And that's what we all want, isn't it? That makes the workplace go a lot smoother. It makes everybody's jobs a little bit easier when everyone is taking ownership and initiative. So, do you ever experience change in your workplace? Yeah. How do most people react to change? Not good? Why do you say that? Or how do they react?
People like things the way they like it, so they usually are not receptive.
Not receptive. And what do you think?
Basically the same thing. They like it the way it is, they're status quo.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're fearful because they don't understand how to affect them.
Yeah. Okay. Fearful? Yeah. A lot of different, yeah.
Resistant because they're afraid they're not work or not understanding.
Yeah. Resistance is usually the big word that comes up, right? People resist change. Okay? And oftentimes, actually, if we dig into it, we found out it's not so much that people resist change, and then people get it. We got to have change because in order to stay competitive, things have to change. We got to do things better, faster, with less money, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times, what it is people do not get an opportunity to participate in the change. Okay? And that's a basic, right? That's a basic. It's human nature. People want to have input. And now, what I want to be cautious about, that does not mean that all of a sudden we have to put together a big committee and get everyone involved. And come on, let's all talk about how we're going to do this. That's not what I'm talking about. But that's usually what will happen. Everyone wants their voice to be heard. Oh, well, come to the table and we'll all talk about it. That's not what I'm talking about. There are certain changes with an organization that are mandated, as they should be, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, and people get that too. But what happens a lot of times is people do not get the opportunity to participate in the way of asking questions. They don't even get a chance to buy in. They don't get a chance to take ownership because the change is thrust upon them. And what I've noticed a lot of times, and especially when I'm working in an organization where they say, oh, people are still complaining about this change that we put in 2 years ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is, something. And it usually has something to do with, like, oh, I don't know, timekeeping systems, or, I don't know, a lot of little administrative stuff, office supplies. People are still complaining because you changed the brand of pen a year ago. You know, people just don't like it. If you've ever been involved in the changing of the selection in the soda machine, that is when you just stay away from that. Just don't ever change the soda selection. You'll be fine. I've been involved in those. It's crazy. But oftentimes what happens is these changes are thrust upon people. They don't even get a chance to ask questions. You can't buy in if you don't even get the chance to ask questions. Okay? So we're going to talk more about that again. We'll circle back to that and find, well, how can you do that? How do you get people to buy in? Because if you don't get the buy-in, you're not only going to get resistance, you're also going to get well, first, give people opportunity to take ownership. Because if you don't, what will happen is you are also going to get bad attitudes. Okay, bad attitudes. Do you want bad attitudes in your workplace? No. Do you have some bad attitudes in your workplace? Yes. And oftentimes, it's these little things that we could fix just by doing some of the basic leadership things, management things. So bad attitude is like a flat tire, you can't go anywhere until you change it. And one bad attitude can ruin it for everybody, can't it? Have you seen that in your organizations? One bad attitude can poison it. There's that saying, one bad apple can spoil a bunch. And that's what happens, because misery loves company. And then when we get the bad attitudes fester, because people with bad attitudes love to talk about it. They want other people to know. Okay? And so there's this grumbling going on. And bad attitudes can lead to lower engagement. How many of you here are interested in employee engagement? Probably a lot of you, right? It's a big topic of conversation, especially in the HR world, but in organizations in general. Employee engagement is important, and people spend a lot of time thinking about it. So this is from 2012. This was from the Gallup survey. You're probably familiar with the Gallup survey. From 2012, this was the big state of the American workplace. 30% engaged, they like their job, enjoy coming to work, look forward to Monday mornings. 52% disengaged. I'll go to work, I'll do what I'm supposed to do, I'll collect my paycheck. Okay? 18% actively disengaged. Those actively disengaged people don't like their job, and they want everyone else to know it. They won't leave, though. They never leave. They always hang on. That's because they don't like the change that could come with that. So here's what's interesting about these numbers. Because I study this, I think it's fascinating, because I think people are missing the mark. We want to improve engagement, but we're not doing the right things to improve engagement. So this was in 2012. In 2002, one of the earlier studies came out. In 2002, do you think that the percent of engaged employees was higher or lower than in 2012? Yeah, in 2002, so 10 years before. What do you think, higher or lower? Someone?
Higher.
You think higher? Why do you think higher?
I'm not sure. I just kind of think that over time there's been other things that have come into the workforce, social media, different things that may have kind of pushed them not to be totally engaged in what they were specifically doing.
Okay, so we had a higher. Anyone think lower in 2002? Okay. Well, would you be surprised to know that it was about the same? In that 10-year period, it was about the same. It was 29% engaged employees in 2002. Okay, but here's what's really interesting. Because do you think that companies were putting efforts and resources into raising that number over that 10-year period? They absolutely were. We saw a lot of changes in the landscape of the American workplace. A lot of changes. You started seeing fitness centers becoming a lot more common, didn't you? Think about all the things that they were doing to make work a better place. And a lot of it was focused on the work-life balance, a lot of wellness-related things. Dry cleaning will bring you can drop your dry cleaning off at work. Those things are all good. Chair massages, those things are all good. But it didn't change anything. In fact, companies spent something around $150 billion in that 10-year time period trying to change that number. Do you think a 1% increase was a good return on investment? No. So what do you think the problem is? What do you think the problem is? Well, I'll tell you what the problem is that perks won't fix fundamental flaws. And that's what a lot of the money was spent towards. And it wasn't a bad thing, but it didn't change the problem. And this is a smart group here, I can tell by looking at you. This is a smart group, and I'm going to show you what I was looking at. And this is what I think the problem was, and the problem still is. It hasn't really changed. I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at what people are spending money on, and I know just from the work I do with leaders and teams out in the workplace, by going in and doing a lot of communication in the workplace types of training, what they missed was something very basic, and this is why I say people have to get back to basics. These are the questions, and I'm not sure if you can read them from the back, but these are the Gallup 12. You're probably familiar with these. You probably responded to some of these. The Gallup 12. I put a star next to the questions that I think is where people are missing the mark. And here's what it is. These questions, well, let me ask it this way. If you, and you have probably taken these, and I have taken these very same survey questions, if you were answering this survey and you were answering the question, in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing a good work, who are you thinking of when you're answering that question? Your manager. You are not thinking about the big corporate recognition program, which is a good thing, but that's not who you're thinking about. And those are things that were done in response to these low numbers. If you answered question 11, in the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress, who are you thinking of? Your manager. I starred the ones that are directly related to communication from your manager to you, right? Between the manager and the employee. And that's where the mark is missed. How much work, how much money, how many resources are being spent on fixing those problems? Right? A lot of people don't get the opportunity to go to a communication class. A lot of managers don't get the opportunity to go to a leadership class. People get promoted into their positions as supervisors, as managers, as leaders, with no clue on what to do. They don't know anything about alignment, they don't know anything about buy-in, they don't know anything about the communication, and these problems persist, and that's why we don't see a big change in that. So communication is the third basic, but it's this communication, two-way communication between the manager and the employee. People want to know why they're doing what they're doing. People want to know why they're doing what they're doing. You might be surprised to know how many people land in the classes that I teach on communication skills and have no idea why they're there. No idea. And every time I open a class, I say, how many of you know why you're here? And there's always a couple who have this terrified look on their face. They're like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Well, they just told me to come. How would you feel if you were sent to a class on improving interpersonal communication in the workplace and you didn't know why? How might you feel? You might feel afraid. You might feel like you're being punished. You might feel angry. You could just experience a whole range of emotions, but there's no communication. People want to know why they're doing what they're doing, and that includes every aspect of the job. We'll circle back on this as well, and we're going to talk about exactly how you can make that happen. Communicate with the people the way they prefer. This ties back to the strengths. The DISC assessments that we passed out, a lot of that is communication preferences. Communicate with the people in the way they prefer. Everyone has a preferred communication style. One thing that managers do is they hear this great new technique on how we should communicate with people, and they use that technique across the board. It doesn't work for everybody. Okay? Some people want a more direct approach. Some people need to take that more, kind of roundabout way. There's all those different things. So this has to do with getting the right people in the right seats as well. All right. So now let's talk about the good stuff here. We're going to talk about the how. How can you get this alignment? How can you get this buy-in? How can you improve that communication in the workplace? Goals are a cornerstone for alignment. Goals are a cornerstone for alignment because it's all about, what did we say? Alignment is going in the same direction. That's what the goals help us do. But they're not just any old goals. I'm sure most of you probably have a goal program in place. But the goals in the organization, if you want full and total alignment, need to tie to the organizational goals. So at each level, from the strategic initiatives that every company sets strategic initiatives every year, they cascade down to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And every goal is tied. And that way, at the individual level, I can do something that's helping to support that overall initiative. So another question I always ask particularly in the leadership classes that I teach, I always ask the group, how many of you know what the strategic initiatives are for your company this year? And I usually get a lot of blank looks. And I'll even say, or at least you know where to find them. So how many of you know what the strategic initiatives are for your company, or at least where to find them? And I get about 1 out of 10 people raise their hand. And this is at the manager level. Do you guys see a disconnect there? What's the disconnect there? If the managers don't know what the strategic goals are, what are the chances that anyone on the team is going to be able to do work that's tied to the strategic initiatives? Very slim. Okay, so we have this major disconnect going on. And people do want to know. They want to know how that work they're doing impacts the strategic goals, okay, those strategic initiatives. And it's not because there aren't strategic initiatives. As I said, every company has them. The CEO of a tech firm returned from her quarterly planning session with a popular one-page strategic plan in hand. Her and her executive team spent 2 days at an off-site retreat with a highly paid consultant to come up with this beautifully, nice and neat, succinctly organized plan. They were all set for the quarter, right? Then it came time to roll it out to the rest of the team. Suddenly, that plan that seemed so crystal clear at the retreat was hazy. People weren't sure who was taking responsibility. I'm seeing some nods going on. You recognize this scenario. They didn't know what to do. These are bright people. And all of a sudden it came time to hand it off to the next level, and everyone's like, what are we talking about, right? It's not as crisp and clear as we thought. So all of a sudden it falls apart. So if it falls apart right away at the top level, again, we're going to have a disconnect. People can't go ahead and implement something. And isn't that the whole point of having the strategic plan, is the implementation of that strategic plan? Right? What good is it otherwise? Okay? And we can't hardly expect, if the executive team can't translate the strategic plan, how in the world do we expect frontline employees, supervisors, managers to translate that plan? But this is what happens. So all this good work is done, and then it just kind of dies. It just kind of fizzles out. Well, I'm going to show you this process. It's simple. What did I say? Simple is better. Let's get back to basics. If we're not doing the basics, don't overcomplicate it by adding extra layers of fluff and stuff like that. Let's do the basics first, and then we can complicate it later if we want. But first, do the basics. So this is a 3-step goal process. So goal setting process that is smarter than smart. And here's the deal with this. It's every goal should have a metric, action, and a timeline. And this is MAT. So meet MAT. MAT, metric, action, timeline. Very simple, right? You have a number, you have an action, and you have a timeline. Okay? Every now and then, not every now and then. So this is what it is. I mean, here's a few examples of this. But I'm going to have you guys put this one into practice because I think it's a really easy one. And if you do this at the top of the organization, and you just cascade it down, and cascade it down. And all we're talking about, in organizations, how many goals do you think is the right number of goals for any individual at any level in the organization to be tackling at one time? 3, I heard 3. 3 is what I recommend. I think 3 is manageable, and I'm all about manageability. The more we have, the less likely it is that they're going to get implemented. So what would you rather have? 3 goals that actually get implemented, or a list of 10 that never get done? We want to stick with 3. You can always add more, right? That's the nice thing about it. You can always add more goals if you want to add more goals, okay? Right. But I'm going to have you guys put this into play. So here's what usually happens when we start talking about goals. People get up and leave. No. I'm just teasing. It's true. Minds go blank. Brain freeze sets in, and all of a sudden the smartest, brightest people are just like, don't know what to do, okay? There's just something about goals that just, I don't know, just freezes people up. I don't know if you can relate to that or not, but it's like, ugh. So we're going to try a simple goal setting process here. You're all here at this conference, and you're here for 5 days. It's a significant investment of your time and money and resources and all that kind of stuff that goes into it. Do you, raise your hand if you have a goal for the conference? Anyone here have a goal for the conference? Okay, a couple of you do. So what I want you to do is I'm going to have you put this little technique into practice so you can see how easy it is. And I want you to write down a goal for the conference. Just one, not 3, not 10, one goal. But let me walk you through. Let me give you a jump start here so you don't have to totally come up with it from scratch. Some of you may have a networking goal. Maybe networking is important to you. If you had a networking goal, your goal might sound something like meet 5 new people each day. Okay, so you have your metric 5, you have your action. Your action always has to have a verb, meet. Okay? Doesn't mean you need to become lifelong friends. It doesn't mean you need to go and get, hire them, or you need to go get hired there. Just meet people, and day is your time frame. Okay, sound easy? How about obtaining CEUs? How many of you are here to get some CEUs? Okay, so maybe you have a goal around that. I know from attending this session, this one is approved for 1. I know some of the keynotes are approved as well. So put a number to it. How many CEUs would you like to obtain? Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes. 2 minutes to write a goal, and then I want you to share it with somebody. Really commit to it. A specific goal that you have for the conference. Alright, so just share with somebody next to you, find somebody in your vicinity and kind of share. It does not have to be perfect. Don't worry about it if you don't quite have it completely formulated. The goals do not have to be in perfectly formed sentences either, as long as you use this little formula. So go ahead and just share with somebody if you would. Conversation going on, so that means you probably came up with a goal or two. Do your best to get that metric down with it, and that's one of the biggest reasons why goals do not get accomplished, because there's no metric. They're so vague, they're so just gray. You don't know if you did it or not. And the goal of a goal is to check it off the list. That's what I think the best part about a goal is, checking it off and it's done. The only way you can do that if it's super clear with that metric, that action, and the verb, okay? We're going to talk about this next. And well, the one last thing about that, as far as that goal setting goes, again, that's simple. You start at the top and it cascades down. I believe that every single person in the organization should be setting goals. Everybody should. And I like quarterly goals personally because I think quarterly goals are, just makes everything a little more manageable. They don't have to be huge. They don't have to be huge. But just 1 or 2 or 3 quarterly goals. And a lot of times what will happen, well, let me go back quick. A lot of times what will happen in the workplace, what I've noticed, again, it's like, here, it's time to do our quarterly goal setting process, so here, go write 3 goals down. And people and the individuals are like, it's so big, it's just so gray, it's this huge like, vacuum, like what should I do? Well, if you can give them the next level goal, and this is how I teach it, that next level goal would be, so if you're in the HR department, I'm going to move to Jackie now, we were talking about her job earlier, in the HR department, what's the goal for the HR department? Right? That's what the people on the team should be attaching their goals to. How can I help with that? That's where you're going to get that buy-in from as well. Don't tell people what their goals have to be, and that's a big mistake that I see going on in the workplace. Managers are racking their brains trying to come up with goals for their whole team individually. So say you have 10 people reporting to you. Wouldn't that drive you insane? Trying to figure out, don't set goals for other people. Let them set their own goals. That's where the buy-in comes in. That makes sense, doesn't it? Basic stuff. All right, so let's talk about this next area that can be challenging. Giving performance feedback. Giving performance feedback. So 2 key components for stress-free performance feedback. And that's what the key is here, stress-free. Establish and share performance and behavioral expectations. And the real key is before there's a problem. Many times we wait until there's a problem to tell people what was expected of them. Is that fair to the person? That's not fair at all. We want to let people know ahead of time what those expectations are. So that requires that first step, which is establishing performance expectations. So we're going to talk about performance and behavioral expectations. Have you ever avoided giving someone performance feedback because you were afraid of conflict? Well, many people have. Some of these conversations can be difficult, especially if we haven't told people ahead of time. Now we're going to spring it on them. Oh, by the way, this is what you were supposed to be doing for the last 6 months. Sorry, I didn't tell you. And that's not fair to do that. And when we avoid giving performance feedback, we are going to build average teams, not extraordinary teams. Because people want to know why they're doing what they're doing. And part of that comes from setting these performance expectations. So we're going to talk about the we are going to talk about it if my clicker. Let's just go up here and do it.
The last class I was in it, that happened.
Did it?
It like stalled for a moment.
Yeah, that's funny. I think what happened, well, I don't know what happened. I'm not a tech wizard. I'm not going to find out. And here's why too. So recognition without foundation breeds demotivation. So we can go around all day and think we're getting performance feedback because we're running around high-fiving everyone and great job and way to go and keep it up and all that stuff. Does that mean anything? That doesn't mean anything. I have no idea. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. Right? I don't really know what I did, but thanks. Over time, people get demotivated by that. The other reason is that everyone's getting the same feedback. High performers are not going to continue to be high performers if they're getting the same feedback as the average performers and the low performers, and that's just the truth in the workplace. Okay? That's just how that is. So we want to be very specific. Peter Drucker, the father of management, said people will respect what you inspect. Okay? But people have to know what that is. So key performance measures are QQTS, or not, that's not an S, a dollar sign. Quality, quantity, time, and money. Quality, quantity, time, and money. That's what that stands for. Every single job needs to have some metrics attached to it. Every single job. Every job. Quality, that could be with accuracy, it has to do with evaluations, it's how well you're performing your job. Quantity, the second Q, those are things like products produced or services delivered, things along those lines. Timeliness is going to be things like meeting deadlines, SLAs, and then the money could have to do with, staying within budget or something along those lines, okay? That's just pretty basic. However, there's always somebody in my classes who say, oh no, you can't measure my job. Can't measure my job. And they're kind of happy about it too. I don't know why. Because I say, if a job can't be measured, what value does it have? So when somebody says to me, no, you can't measure my job, I say, wow, I'm very afraid for you. I'm very afraid for you. Because what happens if things kind of take a downturn? Whose job is going to get eliminated first? Somebody whose job cannot be measured, because you're looking around saying, well, what value do you bring? So if a job can't be measured, what value does it bring? So those are some of the objective type. The performance measures are the objective measures. So we're not going to go into those a whole lot because I want to spend a little time on this next one, which is the behavioral standards. Okay? Behavioral standards, these are your more subjective areas. These are things like attitude. These are things like teamwork, initiative, professionalism. Okay? It's subjective. Have you ever sat down with somebody to have a conversation about their attitude and they pushed back and said, I don't have a bad attitude? Where do you go from there? You do, yeah. But first we want to have those examples set up because that's what's going to happen. And then chances are, as soon as, a lot of times what will happen, as soon as employees push back on the feedback and we don't have anything concrete to kind of support it, it's like, okay, you're right? We don't know what to say anymore, so then we just avoid it altogether. That's not going to be the best approach to take. So we're going to talk about how we can put some specific measures, because if you don't, it's going to be very challenging for you, it's going to be stressful for you, you're going to end up with an average team. One of my clients, a dental clinic, was going through this with their performance feedback process. They didn't have any expectation or any specific measures around these behavioral expectations. And that was leading the managers to just kind of give everyone a 3, right? An average. Again, that doesn't do a whole lot to motivate your higher performers. Remember when I said back to basics, you've got to get back to basics. What they did to fix this whole issue, it just snowballed into this big issue around performance evaluations. And what they did to fix that issue was they ended up overcomplicating their performance evaluation process. They were using a 100-point rating scale. Can you imagine how hard it's hard enough to do evaluations when you're dealing with a 5-point rating scale, isn't it? 100 points to rate people on, and they were rating them on like 20 different areas. I was like, whoa. Fortunately, I wasn't there to help with that part. I just came in to help them put some definitions around what this stuff looked like. So we spent some time together trying to figure out what specifically does attitude look like, and how do you map that out? Especially when you're talking about, if you're talking about a standard 5-point rating scale, what does a 3 look like when it comes to attitude? What does a 4 look like? So we have average, above average, and then exceptional or outstanding. That's kind of typically the labels that we'll see. What does that look like? Because otherwise what will happen is you're going to get the argument, you're going to get the pushback, and it's going to be difficult to have those conversations, okay? So today, if you worked at that dental clinic and you got a job at the front desk, okay, dental clinics, any clinics, they've got the front desk there, they've got people up front at the reception area checking people in. Today, if you work there, the supervisor would tell you, here's what an outstanding attitude looks like. This is specifically what I'm looking for. I would expect you to review the patient list at the beginning of the day, so you're familiar with who's coming in. When the front door opens, I expect you to look up from the desk, make eye contact, smile, and greet that person by name. That is a specific example of outstanding. Okay, do you see how we made that subjective area very objective? Okay, what's that? A rubric? Yep. And that's going to help it be easier for people to know what to expect from you. Then, when it comes time to have that performance discussion with somebody, do you think it will be easier for you as a manager to justify why they didn't get a 5, why maybe they got a 3? Maybe they don't look up at people. Isn't it amazing if you walk into a clinic and someone actually makes eye contact? It's like, wow. Most of the time, I don't know where you, well, I live in Minneapolis, so I don't know. I'm from Minnesota. And sometimes you walk up and it's like, hello, excuse me, I'm standing right here. So that's one thing where it can be made more clear. So I want you to think about this for a second. We're going to just do another quick activity. Think about one way you could demonstrate initiative. Because initiative is another thing that we're looking for. We expect people to show initiative. We said that because we want buy-in. We want buy-in. We're asking them to show initiative. What's one specific thing somebody could do to demonstrate initiative? Okay, I gave you the example from attitude. How about initiative? One specific, yes?
Volunteer.
Volunteer. Okay, you're looking for somebody who raises their hand. That's an excellent one. Give you a minute, just think, or if you have one, throw it out.
Something that's not their job.
Doing something that's not their job. Okay. Take a minute to think it through. What could you demonstrate? You're going to have a talk with somebody, you're going to let them know, hey, this is what I expect when it comes to initiative. Outstanding. We'll talk about outstanding, right? Yeah.
Solving a customer complaint, maybe you're right, or having to go to their supervisor, or the chain. No, if they're empowered to do so.
Right. Solving a problem that they're empowered to do so. They see it, they take care of it, done. Didn't even have to bother you, and I'll tell you about it later.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent. Somebody else have their hand up? Yeah.
Offering suggestions for improvement.
Offering suggestions for improvement. They see a need. And they're actually, instead of just talking about it or ignoring it, they actually maybe make a recommendation and talk about how they can take ownership of it. Excellent. Somebody in the back? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So this stuff isn't easy to do. This stuff isn't easy to do. So I have another free gift for you because I'm feeling so generous today. I have another free gift. I have a PDF that if anyone wants this, I'll send it out to you. And this will take you through the goal setting process. It also will, it's got worksheets and templates in it. And this is one for helping you identify those behavioral standards. And I use it, I give the example, and I know you can't see this in the back at all, but get your binoculars out if you would. What's that?
So I can barely see.
I know. But, yeah, I know. But this has behavioral standards examples, and what I do is I run it through a 5-point rating scale, and what that looks like, and then some specific examples. So this is something that you could see being used. So it's got behavioral standards, it's got the key performance measures, and then it also has conversation guides in it. What do you say to that person who has an opportunity for development? Okay? So I'm going to pass around a couple of bags. If you want this, I'll send it out to you electronically. And just throw your business card in there. And if you put your business card in there to get this, I'll do a drawing for 2 of my books too. Okay? I'll give out 2 of my books after we pass this around. But let's get this taken care of now so that we're not stuck here at the end trying to do that. So I'll send that out to you, and it'll make your life so much easier. If you want to pop a business card in the bag, and then I'll do a drawing for a couple of books. But this is going to be one of the most important things that you can do if you want to build that extraordinary team, because the people who are your extraordinary individuals will rise up to those expectations. They want to know what they're doing. They want to know how they can excel. Okay? Okay. Now let's talk about this buy-in. One surefire way to gain employee buy-in, it's listen. It's listen. What I've noticed is that we spend a lot of time telling and not a lot of time asking. Okay? And we do that for a variety of reasons. One, we do it because we think it's faster. It saves time if we just tell people all the time what to do instead of asking them and getting their input. We do it because we like to be the experts, let's face it. If we're managers or leaders, we like to be the experts. We like to be the person with the answers. And it's just, we're in the habit of doing it. We're just in the habit of doing it. So think about the last time somebody talked to you about an issue they were having, either personal or work related. The last time somebody talked to you about an issue they were having, either personal or work related, did you want to give them advice on how to fix it? Yes. If you say no, that's not true. It's human nature. What we do is our knee-jerk reaction. Somebody comes to us with a problem, and our knee-jerk response is to fix it. Okay? But is that what they wanted? Did they want your advice? No, never. Not unless they specifically asked for it. But we are worried there's just something about it. And you know what? Maybe you have the answer. But even if you have the answer, that doesn't mean that's what they want. Okay? How many of you like getting unsolicited advice? No one ever raises their hand. No one ever raises their hand on that. But we love to give it. And that's what we do in the workplace. And so I just challenge you with this. Pay attention to that. Are you doing more telling than asking? If somebody comes to you with a question about how to do their job, do you automatically give them the answer, or do you ask? Okay? So remember we were talking about change earlier when I was first introducing the concept about buy-in, change, and how change is just thrust upon us, or upon people in the workplace. They don't get an opportunity to participate in the change. Well, here's a very specific technique I'm going to share with you that will help with that process. Thank you very much. And I'll do this in just a minute. The next time change comes down, mandated change, it doesn't matter if it's mandated or whatever. Remember I said it's not, the participation isn't about getting people involved early on in the process, but when that change is rolled out, instead of telling people what the benefits are, in other words, you're selling them on this change, ask them to come up with a list of the benefits that they see. Okay? And this should happen in a small group setting, so it should always happen with your immediate reports, okay, with your immediate team. Because again, another thing that will happen a lot is that a change that impacts the entire company, they'll call a big staff meeting, right? We'll have a big town hall, everybody come in, we're going to hear about this change. And then nobody ever says another thing about it. And then people are like, right? And usually another thing that'll happen is maybe I'm the CEO of the company, I bring everyone in and say, okay, this change is going to happen. Does anyone have any questions? What happens? Why doesn't anyone say anything? Is it because they actually don't have questions? They have questions. No one is going to stand up in a meeting full of their peers and everybody and all these other people who aren't in their group and ask questions because they'll feel dumb. They're looking around and saying, no one else is asking questions. I must not be understanding it. Right? We don't put people on the spot. So then what needs to happen is we want to keep filtering. So cascading the goals, you cascade the change down too. That communication has to cascade down, down, down. And then the supervisor, the immediate manager of the group, needs to re-announce the change or talk about it and say, okay, I know, acknowledge that it's maybe difficult or whatever, but what benefits do you see in implementing this change? They don't have to answer it on the spot. Okay? Let them have time to absorb it. And what you're doing is you're forcing them to look at the positive. Okay? You're forcing them to get creative with some ideas on how this could help them. Right? And the other way you're getting the buy-in, so that's with change, but also with the goals. So I mentioned the goals. This is all part of the alignment, how we bring all of this together. The goals get set, you roll it out to your team. Hey team, how do you think you can support these goals? It's simple. So instead of telling people what they have to do, ask people what they can do. Again, it's not human nature. We like to tell. Take that step back. Okay? So I think we're running short on time, which is good because we're just about done. So I'm going to leave it. Well, I'm not going to leave it this. First, let me do the drawing. Okay? So that's kind of what I had. That was a lot of information in a kind of a short amount of time. Hopefully, some of it will stick with you. But let's do a drawing. Would you do me the honors? Jackie will draw. I've got 2 books.
All right, first one.
All right. This is the power of personal leadership. Smart leaders know success is an inside job. There you go. And from this side of the room, I'll pull in you read. How about that? And what do we have?
Julia at the ball?
Julia did oh, very nice. Everyone right from the middle there. Excellent. I'll leave you with this quote from Coach Phil Jackson, the former coach Phil Jackson of the Chicago Bulls. The strength of the team is each individual member. The strengths of each member is the team. And really what that means is we're talking about we want to get that alignment. We need the right people in the right seats. Everyone's coming to the table with a different set of skills, different strengths. Bringing them all together. The strength of each member is a team, and that's that collective. Everyone's in it for the same reasons. Everyone's getting valuable feedback. Everyone's getting good feedback. Everybody has an opportunity to participate. Everybody has an opportunity to do their best work, and that's what building an extraordinary team is all about. So thank you so much. Great being with you. Enjoy the rest of your day.